Good afternoon. I am Michael Popa, Executive Director of the Mainstream Coalition, and thank you for joining us today for Mainstream Live Election 2020. Today we'll be discussing important issues surrounding the BOCC race in Johnson County with a panel of guests who are very familiar with the county and the makeup and role of the BOCC, the Board of County Commissioners. Today I'd like to welcome former County Commissioner and first Chair, Annabeth Surbaugh, former County Commissioner Ed Peterson, and current Mainstream Coalition Board President, and former County Manager Zacharias. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks all for being here with us today. Annabeth, would you like to go first and just give a little bit more information about who you are, your time on the commission?
Well, let's see, I was on there forever. I started in 1992 as a commissioner when there were 5 commissioners. And I worked with the first manager of the county. Prior to that, the commissioners were the management, which they are still across the country in a lot of places. And so I've seen a lot of evolution, then ultimately becoming the first elected chair as opposed to the rotating chair.
Excellent, thank you. And Ed.
I served on the board as a commissioner for the northeast part of the county from 2003 until 2015. Prior to that, I was the mayor in Fairway and a city councilman in Fairway. And in that capacity, I was appointed to serve first on Vision 2020 group. It was a citizens visioning committee that recommended that the county change its structure of government. And kind of as an offshoot from that effort, I then served on the initial committee that was trying to design the charter. So have had a fair amount of hands-on experience in recommending and designing what we have in the county government structure today.
Excellent.
Yeah, when I was running for county commissioner the very first time, they used to rotate the chair. And I could see that without a countywide elected chair, it was very hard to get something done in a year, because most things that happen in the county take more than a year. And no one wanted to own something they couldn't finish because it made you look bad and you had to get elected. The other problem was you served your district as well as being chair at the same time. So you had 2 masters, and it was very difficult. And when I looked into once I got elected, when I looked into finding how we could change that, I was told we had to have a charter change, which goes to the state and all. And then I quickly found out that the best way to get a charter change was to have a visioning committee recommend it. And the visioning committee did recommend the charter change, and the change of the clerk and the register of deeds from being elected to coming under the manager. It increased the manager's position. I've always been confused. Hannes can answer that, but to me, the manager's always been the same. He's been the guy you go to. We tell you what to do and you make it so. So it's real easy for me. And so the managers were always the same, but the register of deeds and the county clerk are now appointed by the managers. So prior to that, there were no criteria. You didn't have to be able to add 4 and 4 to be the county treasurer. So
everyone nods. Well, Hannes?
Came to the county, been in 35 years of local government administration, came to Johnson County, fortunately so in 2001, and then by the good graces of Annabeth and supported by Ed, became county manager in 2009, that time period, and served through the beginning part of 2019, and currently a professor of practice at the University of Kansas. So trying to develop great minds for the future doing this kind of work.
Excellent. And thank you for being here as well. So how long did all of you serve together? And
wow. Well, just ask who they served, because I served since 1992.
Right. So what was it?
I was there 19 years because I was on the water board when I started being county commissioner. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our overlap was from about 2003 until 2012. Roughly.
Yeah, well, that's about that right. That's right.
So almost
but Ed,
2010.
You and I worked a lot longer than that, because I remember sitting in your office when you were mayor and I was chairman of the water board talking about water issues.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about the time we were Let's not get too old here, Annabeth.
Hey, listen, I'm accepting it.
We don't look at, so let's don't, don't
Right.
puncture the myth here that.
Well, we were talking right before we went live, and this was not planned, but today is Throwback Thursday on social media.
Yeah,
And we're really lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you here today, just to give us some insight on BOCC and the inner workings of the county. And having said that, you served together about 10 years, and so you saw a lot of change at the county level and within the BOCC. You had mentioned the Charter Commission and the Visioning Committee earlier. Anyone can take this. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what, in fact, the Charter Commission laid out and what it did? Obviously, it laid out that there would be, Annabeth, as you said, an elected chair on the governing body, but what else did it do?
Well, the Visioning Committee put forth as one of their criteria of things to change that then created the Charter Commission, that they didn't think there should be, that the county clerk, the treasurer, register of deeds should be ministerial and not be elected, which they are a lot of places. We already had changed our auditor. I'm not our auditor, I mean our appraiser. And then add two more commissioners, which I was all in favor of because the 3rd District mine was getting out of control, and then create a elected chair as opposed to rotating. So really the whole thing came, and Ed was on the Visioning Committee, the whole charter was even thought of as a result of that Visioning Committee. So I like to give them a lot of credit for it, is what I'm trying to say.
I think a big part of our thinking behind the recommendations was looking at a rapidly growing county and a citizenry that wanted to continue high quality services and feel like there was good access to their government. We felt that a limited number of commissioners were not going to be able to be responsive to a large constituency that they were going to have as the county continued to grow. And then we also felt that having a countywide elected chair would kind of evolve into a mayoral type of role where there would be a focal point for leadership of the county and a focal point to set the agenda. I think one of the shortcomings of the previous setup was that nobody was really responsible at the elected level for pushing the whole county agenda. And the various commissioners would take turns, and while they were chair, they could do a pet project or two. It wasn't ever a big project like Annabeth just said. And then we also noticed the staff had the ability to kind of, if something that staff didn't really want to do, they could defer it until somebody wasn't a chair, or if it's something they really wanted, they could wait until their friendly commissioner was chair and try to slip it through. And so we felt like that really hamstrung the county in terms of having a long range plan that was being effectively implemented. So those are the main reasons. And then the discard of some of the elected positions and changing those to appointed, we felt was necessary to professionalize those offices. Register of deeds for most, that would be, I think, the most glaring need for that. And there was consideration of the sheriff and the district attorney. And I think part of the compromise that was made in an agreement to put this before the voters was that those two seats would remain elected. And we probably ought to talk about that later. But
yeah, and I think the other thing I would add to the conversation is that we made elections that were partisan, nonpartisan. And I think we transformed, in my opinion, the idea of the governing body being a legislative body to a governing body. And I think the distinction is that these 7 people are really trustees of a corporation called Johnson County Government. I think that was significant as well. Additionally, it articulated clearly the county manager position. So it really gave authority to the county manager to say the budget, even though there are elected officials, there are governing bodies, the mental health board, et cetera, other governing bodies, irrespective of who gets connected to the county, all has to go through the county manager's office in terms of setting one common agenda and one common budget. And that really is the biggest policy document, is the budget. So those are 2 additional things I would add to the conversation.
Well, it also unified salaries. Remember the governing boards?
Yes.
We had some governing boards being managed by someone making a lot more than comparable people within the county system. But one of the other large things that happened with the chairmanship is, and I thought was one of my reasons for wanting it, was that we had a mayor, we and our counterparts across the metro area all had a person that was elected and repeated. And you can't build a regional relationship when you change the head of the person you're talking to every year. And that was one of the things. And I thought Johnson County was losing. I've always said, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu. Johnson County was losing because they'd all get together and they wouldn't call us because they didn't know who to call. You know, it was just a rotating chair. It wasn't, you know, it was kind of a figurehead.
Sure. So is today's commission the way that it was envisioned back then?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the commissioners themselves. I'm talking about the structure of the commission. Everything the way it is now is how it was envisioned back then.
Yeah, the
And
charter is,
what we see is what you gave us.
Yeah.
That's
well,
correct.
it is. But remind that there is a special
Ed,
statute. Well,
Ed starts laughing. Sorry, Hannes.
There's a special statute that Kansas put in place just for Johnson County, which put in place the possibility for this charter to come forward. And part of that statute requires every 10 years a new charter review commission to come forward. So that's going to be happening, and I guess actually is underway, or it will be soon to make all that happen, because by statute that has to be looked at every 10 years. So it is in the form as it was originally done in 2000 and voted on. Mind you that there were several attempts before that time, before the final charter got approved. I think, Annabeth, I think there were some charters, like 2 or 3 times, at least 2 times before the final thing got approved. And now it's being reviewed every year. Yeah.
And I remember one of my first week in office, a man from the League of Women Voters showed up in my office telling me he wanted 2 things. He wanted a charter change and he wanted an auditor in Johnson County. And so I think the League of Women Voters had supported long before. And I think the commissioners, when there were just 3 of them, wanted to do a charter change.
Yeah. So is that up for review in 21?
Yes.
Or is it starting? Okay, so it is 21.
Yeah, it's my understanding.
Yep.
So essentially that would be on the ballot this year.
No.
Well, not so it is not on the ballot this year, but in choosing, in the voters choosing who they elect for the seats could determine.
Right.
I guess the concept, the concept of the idea is on the ballot this year, because whoever gets elected is going to be reviewing that and possibly making changes.
Well, there's a statute that talks about the governor has a certain number of appointments, the House, the Senate has a number of appointments, commissioners have a certain number of appointments. That's all pretty well structured. And they present a report, which may indeed have no changes or some changes, but though whatever changes come forward have to be voted on by the public. So nothing can be done by the commissioners by themselves.
But if they don't change it, there doesn't need to be any vote.
Correct.
Only if they change something.
Perfect. So we're talking a lot about the structure of the commission and how the charter commission set that forth. I think a lot of people, I know I was at one time confused about what exactly the Board of County Commissioners oversees. What's the relationship between the board, the county manager, other governmental agencies, school districts, water districts? What's under the purview of the BOCC?
Well, a lot, and I'll start, the people can chime in.
Or maybe what's not. Would that be shorter list?
No, it would not necessarily. I think the Johnson County is unique that it has the wastewater system. Most counties do not have wastewater. So that is probably one of the largest part of the budget for Johnson County government is Johnson County wastewater, mostly in terms of capital infrastructure and expenses that way. The single largest project we have going on in Johnson County right now is not the courthouse, it's the rebuilding of the Tomahawk sewer plant. which is a huge deal that way. So that's unique to Johnson County. But other things that Johnson County does, oversees various governing bodies, which most counties don't do. Johnson County Mental Health, Johnson County Developmental Supports, Johnson County Parks and Recreation, Johnson County Library, Johnson County Airport Authority. Most all of those counties do not deal with in Kansas. Johnson County does. Additionally, what Johnson County does are the traditional functions, which is all the appraisal records, all the functionary parts of government that make things work, that people don't want to talk about. Who assesses your property, and who collects the taxes and distributes those taxes, even though the mill levy is a different animal by itself. Plus, I talk about all the shuns, the incarceration, the prosecution, the adjudication, and the rehabilitation on the criminal justice side. All that is sticky stuff that Johnson County is responsible for, and all the human services, public health, with regard, and housing issues and so forth are all part of the purview of Johnson County as well. So all the stuff you think about as far as the mechanical infrastructure, we make
Libraries too.
Libraries too. Everything that the state of Kansas does, basically, counties do as well, because every county basically is an extension of the state of Kansas. So we are the middleware, if you will, and local governments for how we govern our society.
I'd add to that, I didn't quite catch if Hannes talked about public safety, but there's ambulance service. We look after the fire service in the rural areas, plus we have one fire district in the northeast part of the county. And then the sheriff's office and all that he oversees. So, I've always distinguished what the county doesn't do is where there are municipalities, they take care of their own police, and they have their own parks and their own public works. And everything else in almost every other government service comes through the county.
Well, it's important to note there are some people in the county who have no city government. They're in the unincorporated area, so their county commissioner is all they have. And when you represent them, they remind you of that daily. But that is true.
Explain unincorporated, Annabeth.
It's not a city. It's still part of the county. It was all unincorporated at one time. I believe it incorporated 25% or something during my time on the board, because we keep growing and annexations were taking place. So it has to be annexed in order for it to be taken from the county and brought into a city. Very contentious issues.
Yeah. So every square inch of the country is either governed by a parish or by a county. So there's no square inch of the county that's not governed that way. So we derive our authority from the state of Kansas. We are supposed to be, and we are, the local form of government. Then we kind of we provide the basic level of services, and then other entities add to it. Cities may add to it as far as that's concerned, but should a city go away, and we've had some cities go away, although they got incorporated other places, Countryside comes to mind, that basic level of service still has to be provided by the county government. So everybody else goes away, county government still has to go and take care of it.
Okay. And where's most of that land? Where's most of the unincorporated area, or is it scattered throughout the county?
Oh no, south and west.
South and west.
Yeah. There are some really.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There are some really colorful jobs that commissioners have. One is when there are property disputes. There are certain occasions where you go out and you walk the property boundary.
Did you ever do one, Ed?
We did one, I think.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
There was another one where a small rural cemetery ran out of money and there was nobody to oversee it. And there's some sort of a process that we had to go through where the county would assume responsibility. There are just a lot of odd little jobs that fall to the county.
Well,
some
not
more colorful than others.
Yeah, noxious weeds comes to mind as far as that.
Yeah.
So we got to govern those sort of things.
Which also reminds me that we're over the fair. We administer the fair board's business. They're self-sustaining, but we provide them staff. So that's another thing. It's just a lot of extraneous things. I think one of the most important things for people to understand is if you live in the unincorporated area, the county plows the snow from your streets. If you live in a city, the city is responsible.
Okay, so the county touches our lives in a bunch of different ways, basically, more than one would think. What do you think? And let's start with Annabeth, because you're on top of my screen. Annabeth, what do you think are the high priority issues, or what should voters be thinking about when they go to the polls, or they fill out their advanced ballot and mail it back in, or put it into a drop box?
Well, first of all, they should go. I think that's been made abundantly clear. That hasn't always been the way it is today. And of course, I don't think you can get around the COVID virus, and that means the public health department. And but I'm not sure exactly what your question. I guess what I would answer the question is, I've always felt that when people go to the polls, they should get to know about both candidates, the candidates on that they get to vote for, and then pick the person that they think values and work ethic and those kind of things fits their desires. Because you never know. I remember I got elected the first time, and The Wonderful World of Oz, which became a horrible nightmare, wasn't even on being thought of. But yeah, that was one of my contentious things. So you can't deal with issues, because the issues, you don't even know what they're going to be. Today we know COVID, but we didn't know COVID when the last elections were held.
Okay.
So I mean, I think you should think about the person and how hard they work, how much experience they have for the job, and will they return your calls and show up and do the work? It's
been my experience anyway that if candidates don't show up before the election, they're not going to show up for you after the election.
That's correct.
Good point.
Good point. Thank you.
I.e. go to forum
since we've
like yours.
Since we've gone to
I posted on your forum the other day that people didn't show up, and they're not going to show up when they're running. Don't count them showing up when they win.
Thank you. Ed?
I think since we've gone to the nonpartisan elections, that takes out a lot of things that people might ordinarily be focused on when they go to the polls. In my own experience, I think the most important characteristic to look for is a county commissioner who believes in providing high level of service. And because there's so many of these decisions you make, that really boils down to what level of service are we going to provide? What can we afford? And balancing those two kind of sometimes competing interests. And I think that's the kind of individual you need to look for. And to make those decisions, it takes some work. You've got to look into things and do some research and ask some hard questions. So I think a person that has the capacity to do some analysis and independent thinking is important as well. But the partisan type issues don't really come up very much. And I don't think people should concern themselves with those so much when looking at the county commission.
And Hannah, she'll give us a different perspective. You were not on the board, but you worked with the board very closely every day. What should people be thinking about candidates, I guess, when they go to cast their vote?
In the typical management fashion, they're both right. No, they really are.
You can tell he's been at it a while.
That's right. That's right. But I would reinforce that choosing in an individual, I think they go to the poll, is somebody who indeed can make good judgments, because the COVID-19 is what I call basically, and Richard Florida talked about it here recently as well, is an inflection point. We're not going to go back. The world is going to be uniquely different since March 1st, and what that looks like is uncertain. So choosing somebody who can take information in, listen to all parties, and make a reasonable judgment as go forward is important, and do that in the context of providing the basic services that were required to make this really a county be sustained and be important and terrific. The only thing I would add to it is with the attitude of trying to play the long game. Not just what is good for the next 2 years of the next election, but what's the best thing for the next 15 or 50 years? Because that's the planning you have to think about. And I think we've been fortunate, frankly, that we've had elected officials that are willing to go ahead and make those tough choices for the long haul. And that is not easy to do.
Yeah, Mark Twain said, a politician looks to the next election, a statesman looks to the next generation.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
So I think the county commission has been almost elevated to a reality star level lately. A lot of people have been, and that's good or bad. Maybe it's good that the commission is getting some attention so that people understand
This
the
isn't-
importance of the county commission.
This isn't the first time. This is
Right. No, it's not the first time, but right now it's I think even more so because people are at home and they're paying attention to everything. They're hyper focused on
They have
politics
time.
right now, and they have time, right? But it's, as you were saying, it's not usually like that. You're making a lot of the boring decisions that people don't even want to think about, but they want someone to make the decision for them and take into account what's best for them. And you do that as a governing body. But looking at the stage right now, what role do you think that the county should play in helping businesses and employees recover from this recession that's being caused by COVID? Ed, I'll start with you first because we started with Annabeth last time.
Well, I think first and foremost, they need to be making prudent decisions about dealing with COVID and getting it under control. I think the consensus among just about everybody I've read is that you have to control COVID in order to get the economy back on track. So I think that as the Public Health Board, which the county commission serves as in Johnson County, that has to be their first and foremost consideration. The county does not have the ability to create economic stimulus. We like the federal government can do, and so we will have some funds coming through from the state and the federal government, which the county needs to distribute. And so there have to be some strategic choices made about how those funds are dispensed. But I really think there needs to be a better education effort to help the businesses understand the necessities and to get them to buy into whatever the program is going to be to get rid of COVID. And I think that what has really hurt the current commission is there's such a division among the commissioners about whether this is really a problem, and if so, how do you address it? And that basically makes it impossible to have that relationship with the business community where the county can say, this has to be done, and get buy-in from the businesses. They're sending mixed messages. So the community picks the message they want to hear and follow it. And you got people going different directions as a result.
Hannes?
Here, absolutely. I think that's square one, is trying to go ahead and get COVID undertaken and kind of, I guess, manage, I'll use that term. The reality is that Johnson County is going to come okay from the business perspective. We're doing all right. We're doing much better than Jackson County, the rest of the metro area, a hell of a lot better than Wichita is in Sedgwick County. So all the data coming out from K and other places is that we're doing pretty good. The areas that are going to be hit hardest will be hotels, restaurants, entertainment, those areas, and typically the lower echelon employees in those areas. So those who are middle income and above are going to do okay and doing okay, and somebody's advancing the ball. But individuals, the lower echelon, are going to get worse. And what I worry about in terms of small businesses, the impact that Johnson County has over that is really the burgeoning number of individuals that I think will find themselves homeless, or those individuals who do not have health care coverage. Those sort of things are just going to have an impact on us. They'll be subterranean, they won't be overt, but they will certainly exist, and I think put a strain on county government. But square one is getting COVID-19 under control.
Yeah, I would say we need to take care of the virus, and that of course is an ongoing issue. But county government, the cities are really in charge of economic development. If you stop and think about it, they're the ones who zone the hotels. They're the ones who develop their cities. The county always, as I always said this, it produces the underlying quality of life. So that if you're a company thinking of coming to Johnson County, you want the libraries, you want to look at the roads, you want to look at things that Johnson County is in charge of. But you're probably coming to work for in a building that the city zoned and created the jobs. So I think the best thing the county can do is try to keep their social services, mental health, all those kind of things that are going to be a big problem after this at the same quality they always have been, which is outstanding. And I think that's the real challenge to the county, is to keep the social services and the libraries and the ongoing niceties of life, the quality of life. I think that's their challenge.
Let me add to that. I think that's good. That's good because what I think is happening with COVID-19 is that people are able to go ahead and live wherever they want to on the planet, given that we're doing 40% of our work through mediums you're seeing here being online. So the real key is going to be placemaking, and both Annabeth and Ed have been involved in that activity. So the placemaking aspects of keeping Johnson County a great place to live, work, raise a family, et cetera, are really going to be dialed up. And that does mean good social services, good amenities, parks, recreation, et cetera, those sort of things. Those will be really important. Otherwise, people are going to move out and say, well, I can do the same sort of, I can make a living very conveniently by moving to XYZ location across the country. We're now harvesting people to go ahead and live in Johnson County that are on the West Coast and the East Coast. So placemaking is a big deal.
They got that just opposite, didn't they? They pay a high cost of living to live there.
Yeah.
So from what I've seen, I think you've all mentioned this. We haven't been hit as hard in Johnson County, or it doesn't seem like we've been hit as hard in Johnson County. I guess what could we do, or what do you think the BOCC can do to increase those mental health or social services that we were talking about, since we haven't been hit so hard, financially, if you will? But there will be that lower echelon, as you mentioned, Hannes, that will need these services. How does the county commission do that?
Well, I think that is the tricky question, tricky issue. I mean, putting more resources toward mental health certainly helps. There are not that many levers that Johnson County can do. One of the big issues is making housing affordable. Now, mind you, I didn't say affordable housing. I said making housing affordable, because to build a house costs about the same as it does, and our median house price keeps on going up. And I think in COVID-19, it's going to continue. More folks are going to move, I think, out of the central core to a degree into the suburban area for kind of being able to be walkable areas and those sort of things. So I think housing value are going to go up. What I think what we can do is have a dialogue about it to say, what is the appropriate wage that should be paid to individuals who are working at the lower echelon? Controversial topic, admittedly. But that might be an option to go ahead and say, but there's not a lot of cash or things we can do to go ahead and provide that level of work. Housing construction, again, has been the bailiwick of cities. What the county could do is provide some, I think, resources and perhaps some brainstorming on dealing with the homeless population. There is no homeless shelter in Johnson County for unaffiliated males, period. We have some fits and starts in the Lenexa area, but there's nothing going on that's permanent. And I think some cities are really wanting to have some assistance saying, let's have a dialogue about this in a meaningful way to provide that level, as opposed to literally shipping them over to Lawrence or over into downtown Kansas City to stay.
Well, that's one of the challenges of Johnson County, is it's becoming more urban and more diverse. I'm talking about in my time seeing it, and we really aren't prepared. We never thought of homeless people when I went on the county commission. Those people were elsewhere. And so the challenges, and of course there's always cost involved with those challenges, are going to be very difficult for the future.
When you mentioned diversity, Annabeth, I see a lot of diversity. I'm in the northeast corner of Johnson County with Ed. I see a lot of diversity in our area, but I don't know about out south. I'm not sure out south.
Well, I live in Lenexa, and there's a lot of diversity very close to my home. So
yeah. Have we seen that diversity throughout Johnson County as a whole, or has it been closer to those epicenter or the metro centers? Like we're very close to Kansas City.
I think it's spread out because if you look at the school districts, they all have increasing and higher levels of school food programs. More participation in their school lunch programs.
Free and reduced lunch, yeah.
And, I don't think driving through, you realize it, but I mean, if you go through the Blue Valley area, it doesn't appear that way, but they, in their school district, have climbing levels of people needing the subsidized school lunches. So, and I also think there's a greater, ethnic diversity than there once was, and that's spread pretty evenly throughout the county. There are I think there's certain pockets that concentrate certain types of minorities, but for the most part, I think it's spread throughout the county. It's you don't see it here because it's not concentrated in large segments. So it kind of, the low income people are not all concentrated in one big housing project. They're spread throughout the county in various small housing units.
Yeah,
And
I
now
think
you
this-
mentioned, oh, go ahead, Hannes.
if you think about that, suburban poverty, we've been talking about the last few years as well. Interesting books being written about it. It really is, as Ed said, diffused, but it exists. And one of the ways you're seeing that manifest right now is digital connectivity or the lack thereof.
Correct.
Every school district, I think, irrespective of location, Blue Valley as well, finds pockets or individual students that can't afford access to the internet. It may exist, but they can't pay the bill. And I think in this environment, we're seeing that kind of becoming a very large issue is broadband connectivity throughout the county. Now, some places in the county, the Southwest, for example, doesn't even have fiber in place to go in and do it. Spring Hill and some of those areas and out there, Gardner and Edgerton and so forth, having real problems to maintain connectivity, which has an impact on businesses as well. But I think you're seeing this kind of rise to the occasion. If you don't have connections to broadband, you are SOL. And I think that's throughout the entire county.
You both
Well,
mentioned, oh, go ahead.
It used to be that people who needed services like that, special extra services, were all in the northeast part of the county, and it just is spread out a great deal now. And I think that the service industry and the tech industry have caused a lot of people to. I remember I sold my house when I got married to a guy. He just wanted to be close to Garmin. That was his only criteria. So, that's why we're kind of the way it is.
Sure. I think everyone kind of touched on schools so far. And a lot of people think, or a lot of people that I've spoken with or seen online, think that the county commission has something to do with or purview over the school districts in Johnson County. Could anyone want to take a stab at that? Let us know. True,
Well,
false.
one of the things the visioning committee suggested that they want us to be, one of their visions was for the schools to be good. And of course, we've never had any control of them, but the county did create a sales tax that they had the authority for and give it to the schools when they were having great financial troubles. I'm trying to remember the year. Hannes, can you remember?
Probably about 2004, 2005, that era. Yeah.
And we gave them we collected a quarter cent and gave it amongst the schools by they had a formula, it was population based. So the county has in fact actually helped the schools, but they don't have any ability to run the schools ongoingly, for which probably every county commissioner is grateful. That's a tough job.
That's what
it is a tough job. Yes, and I think one thing historically, you remember that it used to be prior to the Unified School District Act, I think back in the 1970s or 80s, every individual school had their own school board. So now what you had unified school districts, which were now called Shawnee Mission and so forth. They had unified all those individual schools into one district, but that's a whole different set of statutes. The county really has no control over it at all. What I think people get confused about is they're equating the mask issue with governing schools. The purview of the county by virtue of state law is indeed that every county is to have a public health board, and the county commissioners are the board of public health. So making those decisions about mask policies and so forth rest at their doorstep, and that probably is why they think they have an impact over schools. They don't. It's over public health issues.
I think there have been a couple of occasions in addition to the sales tax that Annabeth mentioned where there were initiatives that the county could undertake that would benefit the schools. I'm thinking at one point we were looking into an entrepreneurial type program where the county would provide some support and the school districts would either be, they would provide the students who were going to then be placed in businesses. It was a grant type of program for the benefit of some of the students. But as a general rule, those are few and far between, and they really don't relate to the actual governing and operation of the schools.
So you may work with the school boards or work in tandem with the superintendent, but you don't have any purview over or running the schools.
Yeah, I think Annabeth, when you were the chair, didn't you have a regular meeting with the superintendents?
Yes, yeah. I was going to say we need to work with everybody, the cities, the water one board, the rural water districts, because we aren't, Olathe has a different water board. So with all the other governing bodies, the county needs to be working with them, and theoretically, I think, try to bring everybody together. That's, they're all individual boards and they want their individuality. So, there's a limit to what togetherness you can get. But yes.
One thing that may
That's like, that, Ed.
Yeah.
One area I think that people sometimes get confused, that you write one check to the Johnson County Treasurer for your taxes.
That's correct.
And I think people don't understand that basically all that money goes to the state of Kansas that gets reverted back to school districts. So the biggest portion of your property tax bill is for schools. The second biggest part typically is for the city you reside in, and then number 3 is the county. But you write one check, so the impression is, oh my gosh, the county must control all that stuff, and we're just the ones who carry the clipboard and do the accounting.
Yeah, the county collects it. That's why we get charged with being the one.
You're the bad, county's the bad guy, right?
Right.
Because that's who we write the check to. But you collect it, you distribute it. I'm going to give a shout out, I hope he's watching, to Mr. Aaron Otto, who, when I joined the Roland Park City Council, was the city administrator, and he made a handy dandy little graphic for us. It was a dollar bill, and it was colored, different colors. This is the portion, almost, I think a little over 30%, goes to the school district. This is the portion that goes to, or no, it was closer to 50%.
Actually over 50, that's correct.
Yeah.
It was closer to 50%, and then 30 goes to, the CFD, and it was really eye-opening, to see that. I just wanted to back that up, that yes, it is the case. I've seen it as well.
That's right.
I think the typical tax bill has like somewhere between 15 and 20 taxing units on it, or special assessments or whatever. There's all kinds of interests that are included in that single tax bill.
Yeah.
And it's different everywhere. I mean, Miriam has a thing called a stormwater district, and the rest of the county has a stormwater tax that's raised through sales tax. So, I mean, it's all, everywhere you live, there's a little bit different variation of what you're paying for.
And the ones who have to keep track of all that is the county, and they do an excellent job of getting it down to the penny about what you're supposed to pay and where it gets parceled out.
And
Yeah, when we do a budget every time there's a budget public hearing, the county always takes a pie chart and shows where all the money you sent in goes to before they explain how they're going to use yours. And that's just sort of defensively.
right. Well, and the county takes in all of even the sales tax revenues, right? And then distributes those back out to the cities.
It all goes to the state. It all goes to the state of Kansas, and the state of Kansas brings it back.
And the state of Kansas will bring it back. So you don't even touch that. But the Board of County Commissioners, the county doesn't even touch that, is what I should say.
Right.
But the county sets the mill levy
For the county.
right? But not for the city. I know. I'm just giving you some guff right now.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
didn't get people riled up. The county is the one that taxes everyone so high, right?
Thanks, you're not helping.
I'm not helping. You're not there anymore.
I still care about it.
We'll
I
see
know
if we
you
come
do.
back again.
Yeah.
We show up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Maybe we may be even a further throwback Thursday. Who the heck knows, right? So
Yeah, right. So we talked about connectivity a little bit earlier, and I know you were talking about technology, but what popped in my head is connectivity, on the ground, transportation in Johnson County. I believe there is a long-range transportation plan for the metro, including Johnson County. But what have you seen? Have you heard of being some significant projects for maybe some public transportation?
well, I think that's going to be. I think that's one of the big changes that we're seeing here with COVID-19. What does public transit look like? And transit is different than transportation. And prior to COVID-19, I would have said that transit's going to take off and be more and more important. I think we've got to rethink that. It may very well end up that way for the next year or two. People are going to be reluctant to get on public transit, given the stuff go with COVID. So that's going to, I think, put at least perhaps a hiccup in what's going on. Long term, my view is that the streetcar in Kansas City will be successful as it goes down to the areas of UMKC, and I think there'll be an opportunity for us to go ahead and see how that can go down China Mission Parkway and down Metcalf at some point in the future. But that's going to be a ways off, just because I think the pressure is going to be difficult to do that. What you'll see in highway projects, I think, the big one is 75th Street and I-35 to get that monstrosity taken care of. And then I think you're looking at 69 highway as well, going down basically south from 435 would be the big issues. I don't see a lot of pressure for a lot more roadways, except for the big project that has yet to be done that Annabeth and others were involved in years ago, and that being the Southwest Traffic Way. But I think that's probably the biggest project that has yet to be done, and I think may never be done.
Are you talking about the Parkway?
Parkway, yeah, sorry.
I think that will never happen.
Yeah.
Our opportunity was lost.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just don't think there's appropriate land available for that use anymore.
And it kind of ties back to the beginning of the charter discussion that you started us off with. If we had had a chair elected countywide, I think that Parkway very well would have been in place. But that was one of the things that no one wanted to take on when they became the rotating chair for 1 year, because it was a horrible project. There are people who wanted it and people who didn't, and there was nobody in the middle. And
Explain the Parkway after you're finished, please.
and then we and so it took so long that by the time we came to a point where we had it mapped out and done the work, there was too many people there. We couldn't afford to build it. We couldn't buy them all out. I mean, it should have been done when it was open ground, the farmland. So I think that's one of the good parts about the charter is it creates the momentum to get projects completed, big projects like that.
Yeah, explain the New Century Parkway, where it was supposed to go, Annabeth.
Oh, well, there were 25 different versions, but generally it was I would call it a local 435 east-west. At one point it was going to go to Lawrence, and then another time it was going to go way west. But mostly the big contentious part was in South Johnson County between state line. It was going to connect on state line and go into Missouri to some road that connected over there that was already there. So it was the big controversial part was the part between state line and the western border. I guess it would be like K10 and further west toward the county line going to Lawrence. That was the contentious part. Out Stillwell Stanley, which I was the commissioner for, was the biggest part.
I think the thing of that, what's in the future for us for transportation, I think, is we're going to see on I-35, 435, well, I-35 Beltway, more ramp metering. Although the new technology, who knows? I mean, if indeed automated vehicles come forward, autonomous vehicles, then 15 years from now, we might have, more efficient transportation of vehicles, but we might have more vehicles because everybody wants to have their own individual pod. So I think that, again, that's part of the issue about being flexible about what the future is going to bring you, because we just don't know what it's going to look like and how this is going to shake out with COVID-19. At least that's how I feel about it anyway.
I think there's a couple of potential game changers. One is the shared ride service, kind of equivalent to Uber and Lyft. And somehow I know that the KCATA is working with adapting that to their operation. So that's one possibility. And I think the electric car is going to make a big difference in how people move around. It's going to make a lot of changes. And I think that's definitely the way of the future of the automobile. So and if you couple that with automated driving that Hannes mentioned, I think getting around on the roadways may be a whole lot different in 15, 20 years than it is right now.
I think you're also maybe talking about, maybe you'll get to it. I know our time's getting short here, but there are two big issues really you haven't talked about that I think the county commission can have some real input in that I think are top timely. Can I bring those two up real quick?
Please do.
I think one of them really Annabeth was really involved with very heavily, and that really is climate change activities and environmental activities. And we put in place, I think, a very advanced looking idea about how to kind of deal with climate change issues. And that's not going to go away. And why I think that's important for Johnson County, because we're also responsible for emergency management activities. So our future looks like we're going to have more heavy storm events that's going to really incur, or I guess, bring to us more flooding, which we're going to have to go and mitigate with our stream areas going on in our stormwater management districts as far as that's concerned. Second of all, we're going to have more days of extreme heat, which will put our vulnerable populations more at risk for dying or being a potential death. That's happened before, those sort of things, as far as that's concerned, as well as air quality issues that are coming forward. That's one big thing that the county perhaps can talk about in the future. The second one that we haven't talked about really is criminal justice, and also with Annabeth's guidance, we put in together the Criminal Justice Advisory Council. I think it is ripe to have a conversation about criminal justice activities, and particularly areas about individuals who need to go ahead, that should not have to go ahead and be in jail, but can be released on their own recognizance to go ahead and reduce jails and divert some of that money over into mental health and other areas. So I think those are two ripe areas that the county really has heavy involvement in, that I think are emerging issues that are not going to go away.
Well, and Hannes, you gave me the credit where I was green I was green before green was cool, and there was no one on the board green but me. And then Ed came on and I gave him green. Yep. So I didn't have to do it anymore. So I think Ed was the lead on most of we were very forward on climate change and goals. We were way beyond almost maybe reality, but we were very good. And Ed was in charge of that at the end, because as I became chairman, I didn't have time. And it's always been one of his expertise, transportation, and that's what Ed does.
One of the things that is unique about Johnson County is that it has provided such a high level of service in so many areas that it's perceived rightly as a leader in a lot of different areas. And so if Johnson County can make it work, here we are, middle America, suburban white community, largely, that if it can work here, then it can probably work elsewhere. And I think we have been a leader in a lot of these areas, environment, for example, and I think some of the criminal justice initiatives, mental health, definitely, care for our adult disabled population, all of those areas. Johnson County has been a leader, cutting edge on a lot of things. And, it's just a tribute to having good leadership and having a community that values the high level of service.
Yeah, and I think one of the examples of that is the co-responder program, that we were one of the first in the country to do that.
That's right. Now everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now everyone's doing it.
Well, the whole criminal justice advisory board effort that we did, that we were the second in the nation. Hennepin County was first, we were second. And now we're getting all kind of awards, and people are coming here and studying what we're doing because they're going to start it now. And my gosh, it's been 20 years. It's been more than that, because I put it out as my initiative the first year I was countywide chair. So that's more than 20 years ago.
Yeah. So I think those are really ripe areas for to kind of turn up the volume, if you will, on those. I think those structural elements of Johnson County government, to have legitimate and hard-facing conversations which have an impact in what's going on today. And I think particularly, the incarceration rates and how we go ahead and deal with those who have mental health issues, to not have a police officer dispatched, but a mental health worker dispatched, to de-escalate those sort of things are important. And keeping an eye on, and I think making meaningful impact on environmental issues. That has to be done on a regional basis. I appreciate Roland Park and other folks in Shawnee, the Kansas City Climate Action Coalition, being around. And if I wish them much success. I'm part of that group as well. But those things really, I think Johnson County government can take a leadership position and help foster that conversation on a metro basis, and it'll be a far bigger impact.
Well, and I think we have to give credit to our citizens in Johnson County. We have a very educated population. When you put out a request to serve on a committee, You get 10, you have to choose. You don't have to go find someone to do it. And people in Johnson County have always been very involved. And I think therefore they want forward things. You know, they're willing to accept something forward. And so we've been able to be ahead of our time a lot.
So before we wrap up today, I want to ask each of you, what are you most proud of? What was your legacy that you left for Johnson County? What are you most proud of that was accomplished during your terms? Annabeth?
Well, afraid you were going to call me first. Well, I guess
you were on there the longest. Maybe I'll let you go last so you can think about that.
I'll take a stab. While I served, we started sustainability efforts and were managed to incorporate those into the daily operations and governance of the county. And I mean, it manifested itself in a green construction program, but it would filter down to people taking care of the buildings would take care to make sure they used environmentally sound cleaning solvents and that sort of thing. I mean, it went throughout the entire organization, worked through, and there was complete support of the management team. And to have that implemented to that level, that was very gratifying, and the support of the staff that we had for that was equally gratifying.
And I guess I'll take a stab at it. I think that it is not a sexy response because it's not a
you're the manager. You're not supposed to be.
Yeah,
exactly right. So what I feel proud about is really advancing the culture of Johnson County government with all the great employees, the 4,000, almost 200 employees that are there, to create what we call a culture of constant improvement, where there's enough trust being built up, where everyone tries to bring their A game to work. And we talk about that in the abstract, but I think Johnson County government is still being continued today through Penny Posto, Ferguson, and the great administrative corps to say everyone has to bring their A game today, because we don't know what sort of questions are going to come up in the future. We've got to make sure that we provide the best services we possibly can with the resources we can for the public, because they deserve that great service. So I feel very good about trying to advance and continue that culture in the organization we have with the great employees in Johnson County.
Yeah, the counties are a great part of the success of the county government as a whole. Well, I would say that the fact that there isn't a wonderful World of Oz theme park, I have to put on my list, because I took a lot of beat up over that. And the good news is I was in charge of voting it down, and 2 days later we went bankrupt. So I became a hero overnight. I would say also the creating of the visioning committee, which came up with the charter, because when I ran, I was sitting in the back thinking of being elected. The main thing I wanted to change was have a county chairman, because I just think we have to have, at the time, we're getting too big to rotate every year. And it was impossible for the person who rotated, because for me, I had the biggest district and I had to be chair. That's too much. And so I would say that, and we did start the CJIAC, the criminal justice. I put that forward my first year as a countywide elected, as well as affordable housing study. We never got anywhere on the study, but they were issues, and they're still issues. And I think the Criminal Justice Advisor Council would be what I'd want to be remembered for, because it was at the front page of the paper, every star, the last 3 or 4 times. It's incarceration of people is very expensive. They don't give anything back. We as a society don't gain anything. We just pay money. They're not taxpayers. And so getting them early and taking care of things and having socially responsible and solutions really is the future. Because at one time, the county government I remember, and it's been a while, was between the sheriff, the courts, and the DA, it was 50% of the expenditure. And it takes a little more to start out with the new way. In other words, but if someone is incarcerated, it takes a little longer, a little more money in the front, but the payout is really good, because you make them a productive member of society. They pay taxes. They're not pulling on the system, and they are a valuable citizen. So criminal justice, I think, would be what I would consider the best.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you one more time for being here today. And not only for being here with us, for giving us the county that we have today. All three of you were instrumental in that, for giving us the government that we have today and the county that we have today. And I thank you for that very much. And I want to thank everyone else for being with us today. Please remember, we're only 32 days away from the election.
Yeah.
Only 32 days. So remember to check your ballot, find out about your candidates, and that includes BOCC candidates. Make a plan to vote at ksballot.org. And then make sure your friends are voting. Make sure your family's voting, your coworkers, your book club members. Visit voter2voter.org today to learn out how you can be a part of the movement to get people out and get them voting. And remember, always stay safe and do more than vote with Mainstream in 2020.